So, what are we going to look at in this first auxiliary ideas video? I thought we would look at parallel processing of drums, which is something I've been exploring in both studio work and in my live ideas. This is the general system. It is quite chaotic at the moment. As you can see, I've got some things taped in. This case is not very portable. I'm just trying out ideas. Some of these modules are not being used at the moment. Okay, so what's happening? We've got sounds coming out of the octatrack. We've got bass, some drums, 2 leads. We've got drums, more drums coming out of the model samples. At the moment, they're going in parallel. I think I'll change that and having the model samples going into the octatrack so that the crossfader has more control over the whole sound. They're going into the Eurorack. And then the main thing we're going to look at today is this Plankton Electronics Nutone. This is a tube saturator. I've also got running into it this envelope follower here, also by Plankton Electronics, that you cannot really see, but it is in there so that the tube is kind of reacting to the signal. So the signal flow is that I've got the voices running into this stereo matrix mixer, where I've got one sender going across to the mesa compressor in parallel, some parallel compression, some parallel granular effects via beads, as in granular sampling and granular delay basically. And then also I've got in parallel the Plankton Electronics Nutone. So that is the general idea. Okay, so there's a very quick idea. It is quite difficult with the camera here. So you may have noticed I'm using these 2 filters quite a bit. And they are, these 2 faders, which are controlling the high pass, and low pass of the overseer. In general, I've tried to keep things ergonomic. So things I want to touch more often or need to touch more often on the outside. And in the center is more the mess of cables, which is kind of inevitable with Eurorack. So this is the Plankton Electronics Nutone. It's using Korg's new tubes, which are a new kind of vacuum tube, which to my ear sound very tubey. They overdrive and they saturate in a way that I find very pleasing. So it is a VCA and tube saturator with 2 channels, which I'm using in stereo, but you can also run them in series, so one into the other. So we've got the inputs here, outputs here, VCA controls here, CV controls over the VCA. And here are the attenuators. So we can affect the signal, how much gain we're giving it, affecting the bias here, how much we're turning it up. Feedback for 1 and 2. And then interestingly here, we've also got this cross-modulation option where we can send output 2 back into 1 and output 1 back into 2. So it gets very hairy and very hectic. So let's have a listen. There it is with the Nutone, kind of quite mild. I'll turn it so here now we won't be able to hear it. I'm turning down the output. Bring it back in. Okay, now let's play around with some of the bias. And we can see that when we get more signal hitting the tubes, they become dimmer. And so it can be a very fuzzy and intense kind of sound, which is kind of moving with the modulation, or it can be a lot more mild and still quite crunchy. So I thought we'd have a look at some drums by themselves using a faster pattern. So again, we've got the drums going down to the Plankton Electronics Nutone. We've got some modulation coming from the joystick as an LFO, and also from the drums. There's an envelope follower that is also modulating the tube. Okay, so we'll start with the tube turned down. We'll turn it up. So right here is a good example. We can hear that we've got the drums are shaping the tube. You have to remember there's a whole lot of cross feedback or cross modulation between the two different channels here. So we can hear that we've got an LFO shape, and we've got the drums also modulating it. So listen kind of to the fuzz. So I'll start maybe with the Nutone tubes in, I'll take them out, bring back in. So this is the Plankton Electronics Nutone manual, the Nutone being a 2-channel tube distortion and saturation module with built-in feedback and cross-modulation between the 2 channels. It is based upon Korg's Nutube technology, which is kind of recreating vacuum tubes of the 50s and 60s. From what I understand, it's kind of repurposing display technology, which is somewhat similar to cathode ray tube displays, the old CRT screens. And the technology is similar to that you see in old hi-fis or alarm clocks. So very popular in the 80s, 90s and noughties, which you see less often now. And here's a macro photo of that up close, which is interesting. Anyway, so it's repurposing that for audio purposes, as I understand, which is what we're looking at here. Okay, take 5. Auxiliary Ideas. Welcome to Auxiliary Ideas, a parallel video series. So in my work, in my audio work, I'm often performing experiments on the side in auxiliary to my main body of work, and then looking for ways to combine these with the main body of work, or seeing how these might lead to new ideas. Either new ideas in processing, new recording techniques, or maybe just different ways or combining different instruments together and seeing how they sound together, if they work together harmoniously or if they kind of juxtapose in an interesting way. So this is the idea behind the series, exploring smaller experiments. If you like the channel, if you like the content, please hit the like and subscribe button. It does help. Thank you. So the name, Auxiliary Ideas, it comes from the concept of auxiliary or parallel channels or send and return channels that you might find on a mixing desk, in a DAW, or maybe in some DJ mixers. And the concept is that we have the main body of audio, your main tracks, and we send them across to the parallel channels or the auxiliary channels, and then we combine them again on the main bus. I've got this mixing desk over here, which you'll notice is unplugged because I'm still setting up the studio. I've got a smaller desk over there, which is the one I'm currently using while I set the space up, because we moved house not that long ago. So, Auxiliary Ideas. This is our mixing desk. These are our auxiliary channels. And the idea is we have our audio inputs up here. The audio comes down to these channels. We use the send pots here to send it across to the parallel channels where they work as returns. So sends, returns, these are our parallel channels, our auxiliary channels, or our returns if we're using them in a send and return manner. Otherwise, we can use them as parallel auxiliary inputs in stereo to complement our mono inputs here. All of that is then summed on the mix bus. And so this is the idea behind Auxiliary Ideas, some parallel ideas to whatever's going on over here, in a metaphorical sense. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this video up here. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I've done a good enough job explaining auxiliary ideas. I'll put some more up or make some more when I have the time and when I have more things worth talking about. I hope you've enjoyed looking at tubes in parallel. I think it's particularly nice on drums. It adds a certain sense of urgency to the drums, a certain crunch and a texture, and it thickens them up in a way that is really just pleasing and makes the drums sound fatter and almost kind of funkier as well. And because it's in parallel, you can really kind of overdo it, but then also pull it back in, like dial it back down a bit, layer it in with the original drums. So it's both quite intense, but also still dynamic, which is nice. Anyway, that's about it for this one. Until next time. Ciao. Lead.